Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. And also, as always, our video brought to you by the good folks over at BetUS. Don't forget, you get that 150% sign-up bonus using the promo code YouTube150. You get all this playoff football. You have, of course, the College Football National Championship, woo, with the Irish playing on Monday. You got lots to bet. So go get that 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 using the promo code YouTube150. You're welcome, and thank you to BetUS. Again, Scott Branson, your host, along with my co-host, my partner here, and that is, of course, Mr. Midtown Mo Moton. He's a senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report, also the Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can follow him on x.com at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully, and the show is SNB Today. Mo, the Raiders are not in the playoffs, but my Irish. And if you're watching us on the video, you can see I'm wearing my hat. I'm wearing my Orange Bowl Champions hat, getting ready for the big game on Monday. Nobody wants to give Notre Dame a chance. And I keep telling them, listen, it's Notre Dame. It's God's team. Sorry. No, I'm just kidding. But listen, a great matchup. I live in Ohio State country. All my buddies are Ohio State fans. So you can imagine how Monday's going to go for me, my friend.
I'm waiting for the Riley Leonard propaganda on this show to start from you, Scott. I'm just waiting for it to happen at this point.
Oh boy. Hey, he's played well, but Riley Leonard is who he is. Like I'm not saying he's a pro candidate. I'm not saying. And listen, I've had to watch, and I say had to, because I don't like Ohio State. But I as I said, my buddies, especially the guys up at the Mason Cigar Manor, my friends at the Cigar Lounge, who I hang out with all the time, watch football with when I'm not working, those guys are all Ohio State diehards. My friend Irv, my friend Bob, all those guys, Chris, they're all nuts for Ohio State. So I got to watch them all the time. So I've watched them a lot. And they're good, man. They are good, not only offensively, but defensively. So it's going to be a tough game for Notre Dame, but you never know. I'm just excited they're there. They haven't had a legitimate chance to win a national championship since 1988, Mo. That's the year I graduated high school. That's how old I am. So I'm glad they're there. If they don't win, to me, again, there's no roses for second place, but happy that the Irish are there and that one of my teams, because UNLV did well this year, won a bowl game, all good. Of course, the Vegas Golden Knights are just kicking butt. My Padres got in the playoffs, so it's not a great year from the championship perspective, but so far, I guess I can't complain because I could be a fan of the Oakland A's, soon to be Las Vegas A's, or somebody like that where it's different, or the San Jose Sharks. Anyway, back to football. Mo, we got a few things to talk about. There's not much going on in Raider Nation, right, with the organization or any of that kind of stuff?
Not really. Just a quiet week, Nothing going on.
By the way, I want to give a shameless plug to Mo. We're in the off season now. Mo is now doing 3 times a week on it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right, Mo?
That's correct.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. See, sometimes I forget because I got too many shows and videos in my head. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Bleacher Report Live with Midtown Mo. And he does have now backup singers. So you have to listen in. They do a little shimmy in the background and they Midtown Mo. It's good stuff. So make sure you subscribe to Bleacher Report up there. Get the app and watch Mo 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then during the off season, we're on Thursday. So you get 4 days of Mo and one day of me. I'm fine. I'm like caviar. You don't want it every day. You just want it once a week.
Scott is super humble because he's the person who created the graphic for my primetime show, and he forgets that the time slot of the show is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 p.m., 6 p.m. I hounded him for about a week. I'm sure he was sick and tired of me hounding him, But as I've come to notice that the presentation of a show is just as important as the content, and Scott is one of the greatest people you can contact when it comes to presentation of media shows and media content.
You're too kind. Now you're gonna ruin it for all the haters out there. Come on, man.
People don't realize you're a nice guy. You're beyond a
Oh
nice
well,
guy. You're
I
anytime I need help with anything, I can call Scott, and he's no matter what, he's busy, he's writing,
I
he's doing video, he's still able to carve out enough time to help me.
well, I appreciate that, Mo. And and I say this all the time, and with you, it's true. With our buddy Evan Grote, who's doing a lot more now with Sports Not, and everyone I've come across that that's asked for help or anything of that kind of stuff like that is I enjoy people that I know and care about and work with like you. Um, your success is like my. I get just as excited when you succeed as when I do personally. So that's something too that I found in life. Oh, now for all you young guys out there, is a little lecture from an old man, and that is enjoy helping others succeed in itself you can't even believe the feeling of that, right? Even in little ways, like Mo's talking about a graphic, big deal. Mo's still got to do his
Mhm.
show. He's an incredible writer, but you know what? Any way you can help folks, do it. And the little things can help a lot of people and give them a big step up. So make sure to do it. And I know Mo, you do the same thing with young writers.
Mhm.
All good. Make sure you share that out there. We've seen that this year with such a tumultuous time between politics, the fires out in LA, the terrorist
Yeah.
attack, all that stuff. Just do little things every day, and believe me, they will come to you 100 times, right?
Mhm.
So, speaking of little things, the Raiders need to hire a coach. And we want to jump into this, Mo, because remember last time and I don't take many victory laps, right? But I will say, you and I were probably the only, or one of the only, I shouldn't say the only, I can't verify, but one of the only programs, podcasts, shows, pundits, whatever you want to call it, who during the coaching search, quote unquote search for Antonio Pierce said it was a sham, said it wasn't really a search. It was a poor excuse for a search. They were going to hire Antonio Pierce. They went through
Mhm.
motions. They interviewed two candidates who weren't even viable.
Mhm.
And we criticized that, right? We didn't criticize necessarily them hiring Pierce per se. We criticized this process.
Right.
Now, this time, so much different. And a big part of that is Tom Brady, which we're going to talk about in depth in segment number 2, by the way. But first of all, Mo, I want to go through this list and we'll get into the names, of course. But here's the coaches that have interviewed or are scheduled to interview. All right. Ben Johnson, of course, we all know about Ben Johnson. So hold your horses. Don't get too excited and start drooling. Pete Carroll, Vance Joseph of the Broncos today, I believe, on Thursday. We're recording on Thursday, release on Thursday. Todd Monken from the Ravens, Aaron Glenn from the Lions, and Steve Spagnuolo from the Chiefs. Okay. So you have all those names, Mo. And you know what? All of those coaches are viable coaches. Vance Joseph, not so much, but I understand, as people pointed out to me, and it was a great point. You interview coaching candidates for knowledge as well, and he's in your division. He doesn't get a job somewhere else. Vance Joseph, he's a defensive coordinator of the Broncos. Good to pick. Same with Spagnola, right? So good stuff. But Mo, what a difference a season makes.
This is what a head coaching search really looks like. There are coaches who are defensive guys, coaches who are offensive guys, coaches who have been head coaches before, recently and not so recently. I believe Robert Sala is also on the list. But this is what a thorough search looks like. Just compare the difference between this year's head coaching search and last year, and you tell me the difference. Which one was the real legitimate head coaching search? And you would feel like even if the Raiders don't hire Ben Johnson, you feel like they're going to get the best candidate of the group. Whereas you said last offseason, it was kind of a roll out the red carpet for Antonio Pierce. We're just gonna bring in candidates that aren't comparable to him, and we're gonna make our decision anyway because we already made our decision. This is an open search where you haven't predetermined your decision. You have a priority candidate, Ben Johnson, but you also have quality alternative candidates you can turn to if Ben Johnson goes elsewhere.
Absolutely. And that is the big thing here is choice. And this is where, because listen, Mo, we've gotten to know our listeners. Not all of you have chimed in and and called in or mailed in, whatever. But a lot of you have, and so we've gotten to know a lot of people. So we care about you as fans. The Ben Johnson stuff is huge, and we'll get into the why a lot with the Tom Brady discussion in segment 2. But I just want to caution everybody that don't get too excited. Just because all the signs are pointing, we're seeing national media saying, whoa, the momentum, blah, 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 blah. That's great. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be excited about it, but take it with a grain of salt. A lot can change. Remember, Ben Johnson is going to coach this weekend. If they win, they're going to be in the NFC Championship game, and they could be all the way to the Super Bowl. In that time, there's a lot of things that could happen in Ben Johnson's mind. Let's say right now he's convinced he wants the job, just for the sake of argument, Mo. He goes through the process, and suddenly he says, looking at all of it, I'm not sure I want any of these jobs. I might stay in Detroit. Or, I have an offer from the Saints, or I'm just throwing names out there. I'm not saying he does, and he hasn't interviewed there, but nonetheless. And he just decides that he wants another job. Look, things can happen. People's minds change no matter what. And so I just want to caution people, be cautiously optimistic. I think that's the right term. Don't you think, Mo?
That's the term I've been using for the past 2 to 3 days. I said, while Ben Johnson is a realistic candidate, more realistic than I initially thought he was when the process started, I am still cautiously optimistic, because how many times have we sat here and said, we think the Raiders, common sense, logically speaking, it should go this way. And it goes the complete opposite direction. And I've gone, as a Raider fan, I've gone through that for quite some time, decades, plural, that I think something is going to pan out the way it should, or looks like it's going to pan out a certain way, and it goes in a completely different direction. Just remember that Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, respect to those guys, because they're the top, insiders in the game for the NFL, but they not reported, but their opinion was Antonio Pierce is leaning safe. How'd that work out? Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, said that, yeah, Tom Telesco's job is safe. How did that go? And I'm not picking on those guys, but they're the two most known insiders for the NFL, and they didn't even have the GM and head coaching opinions right. And that's not a dunk on them. It's just to say these situations are fluid. As you said, it could change within 24 hours, where things just go in a different way. And again, cautiously optimistic for Ben Johnson, but deep in my Raider heart, I feel like, Scott, it could be Pete Carroll. I think it's Ben Johnson, if not Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll.
Right. And I saw you post that, and I appreciated you giving that therapeutic advice to Raider Nation over X.com.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that if you're in Raider Nation out there, and this is how I feel too, covering the team, not with emotion that a fan has, but I think the Ben Johnson thing is very real, and I think there's a good chance.
Yep.
I said at the beginning there was no chance. I really didn't believe there was any chance whatsoever. So I was completely wrong. For those of you telling me, well, how do you know? I didn't know, but that was my hunch, and I was completely wrong. So they're in on Ben Johnson, but it's not a done deal, and there's a lot of time. If he was already out of the playoffs, you could close the deal, boom, boom, boom. You capitalize on emotion, you capitalize on this, boom, gone, done, right? Not so. So the Pete Carroll thing, I think, fine. This is where I just don't want people to go from this massive high of, oh, we're going to get Ben Johnson, to we got Pete Carroll, the old dude.
Yeah.
Whose defenses weren't very good towards the end of his tenure in Seattle, blah, blah, blah. So I just don't think that. Then you have Monken, which is another long shot, I think, because I just haven't seen any steam pick up on that one, although he's going to interview. The Aaron Glenn looks like, and unless it's just wishful thinking, and you tell me, Mo, you're in New York, looks like the Jets. Everybody thought he's going to the Saints. But both those teams are kind of in a weird spot, not good spots. The Jets have much more cap room to work with and all that, so maybe that's what Aaron Glenn's saying. I don't know. But that's kind of what we're hearing. Steve Spagnuolo, not much at all. So to me, I think you're right. I think Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll, and we'll see if a third name. I still think a third name will pop in, because you have, with the exception of Pete Carroll, all these guys, and Vance Joseph, obviously now, you have all these guys in the playoffs. So it's not going to be a quick hire. So I anticipate a third name to pop up. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But
So
I do think the Ben Johnson thing is interesting because it's more polarizing than I thought. There's a lot of people who aren't necessarily sold on Ben Johnson, and I say to them that look, you can't say we don't want Pete Carroll, he's old, time has passed him by, and then say we don't want Ben Johnson. What has he ever done? He's just been an offensive coordinator. He's just done that and blah blah blah. Some of these same people were defending Antonio Pierce, who had no experience except a linebacker coach. So I think the answer here, Mo, and this is what I've been saying, nothing is guaranteed. No one is a guaranteed success, no matter how hot of a candidate they are or how cold of a candidate they are. Candidates that don't seem that sexy can go on and have big success, and those that are bantied about as the next great generation of coach, like Ben Johnson, can also fail.
I had this post to, I believe, Raider Strong Todd on Twitter. Shout out to Todd, by the way. He listens to the show. I think he's listened to the show again now that he's back on the road a lot. But he had a post about the people who weren't sold on Ben Johnson, and my reply to those people through his post was, did people know Sean McVay was Sean McVay before he went to a Super Bowl and won it, and won a bunch of playoff games?
Right?
You think Sean McVay at one point people said, "Well, I'm not sold on Sean McVay. Who's this guy in his mid-30s taking on a head coaching job?" Where people, my point was that before every great coach becomes a great head coach, there was a proving period. We all go through this in our lives, right? Whether you're an accomplished person in your field, you didn't come into the field accomplished, right? So you had to prove yourself. And Ben Johnson has at least proved himself as a offensive wizard, you want to call him that. He's arguably the top offensive coordinator in the game. Not play caller, because you want to include Sean McVay and Andy Reid in that conversation, but as far as coordinators are concerned who are not head coaches, he's the best in the game right now. And it's the proof is in the pudding. The Lions have had a top 5 scoring offense all 3 years with him as a coordinator. So I understand people say they're not sold on him, but where are you going to at some point, are you going to take a chance on someone? Because you took a chance on Antonio Pierce and he had less coaching experience overall than Ben Johnson on the pro level. Ben Johnson's actually been coaching for over a decade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite some time on the pro level. Remember, he spent some time in Miami, I believe, as well. So there's some he has some pelts on the wall as a position coach and a coordinator. This isn't a guy who's a 1-year coordinator and just jumped into the frying pan and became a hot name. He's built a resume as a coordinator, and he deserves all the buzz that he's getting right now.
Yes. And he has a major resume on the grass or the turf in case. So I think that is true. And here's the one thing that I find interesting. We'll close this segment talking about this, and of course we're going to stay on top of this buzz. You can stay on top of it with Mo Monday and through Wednesday, and then we'll be back on Thursdays, and we'll jump in with a show if something crazy happens or if somebody hired or whatever. But the Ben Johnson thing has opened up, of course, like everything else in this weird world, a major argument amongst Raider Nation and everybody else, which has been, why would Ben Johnson go to that team with no quarterback and the joke of a history in the last blah 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 blah, and in that division where he's clearly out coached and blah blah blah. Dude, I want that guy. That's a badass. If he says, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, yeah, I'll go there. And I don't have a quarterback yet, but dude, that means you got confidence. That means you got the commitment of the organization and you believe them and what they're telling you. And by the way, it's the Raider brand. And I know the Raider brand has been tarnished for 3 decades from a winning on the football field perspective, but it's still the brand. It's still Las Vegas. So I talked about the Raiders job back when there were 5 job openings. I said, hey, that was number 4 out of number 5. Some people disagreed with me on that. I look at it differently now because of the Tom Brady situation, which we'll talk about after the break, Mo. But Ben Johnson wanting this job and Chicago Bears fans, whose organization has just been as dysfunctional as the Raiders, is sort of high comedy to me.
No, number one, initially I had the job at number 3 because the Saints cap situation
Correct. The cap, yeah,
terrible.
I
And the
understand that.
Jets, I'm here in New York, and I can tell you, Woody Johnson running the show with the Jets, you don't want any parts of that. But
Right.
it's funny to me, and I made the point you made just now, is that I want the head coach who wants to come into a division with established head coaches and says, look, my system works. They're established, but my system works, and I'm here to turn turn this division upside down. I'm here to be a disruptor. That's the type. If the Raiders are hiring a guy and he's like, I don't know, and he's cowering to the rings of Andy Reid and the resumes of Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, I don't want that guy. I want the guy who's going to come in again and say, I'm here to turn Ish upside down. That's part of the Raider ethos. That's part of the Raider mentality. That I don't care what's going on around me. I'm going to come out on top.
Yeah.
So I want that guy if Ben Johnson wants the job. But it was funny to me, Scott. I came on Twitter Wednesday night after my Bleacher Report live show, and I see just endless analysts and even insiders and just people, Bears fans, just railing on the Raiders' job. Like you said, why would he want to go there? It's a crap job. And we're going to talk about in segment 2. One, the Raiders made a chess move in firing Tom Telesco. We'll talk about Brady's influence, but firing Tom Telesco was the chess move the Raiders made to make their job opening more attractive than the other ones.
Yes, sir.
What does the Raiders job offer that the other jobs don't? You can come in with a GM of your liking, probably, because I guarantee you they ran the names of their GM candidates by Ben Johnson during that Zoom interview last Friday. I guarantee you that. And picked his brain of who he would like to work with. So you go to Chicago, Ryan Poles is there, and it doesn't seem like they're firing him. You go to Jacksonville, Trent Baalke's there. Doesn't seem like they're firing him. I told you he wasn't interested in the Jets job recently, and that is a circus over there under Woody Johnson. So you look at the Raiders job, the Saints, Mickey Loomis is there. So he's not going to have much power in those places. You know who's running the Dallas Cowboys now that they're parting ways with Mike McCarthy. It's the Jones family, Jerry Jones leading the way. So the Raiders job is different in the fact that, okay, I can come in aligned with my GM. I'm going to have a bit of some power there coming in with my GM, and the commitment is there. Whereas if I go to Jacksonville, what if they fire Trent Baalke after the 2025 season? If I go to the Jets, what is Woody Johnson going to do with his Madden ratings? And I have to deal with this guy who's looking at the Madden ratings of these players before he wants to trade for them. You have to look at the structure of the organization. And while the Raiders, you could say, have been dysfunctional with Tom Brady now involved, they now seem to have a structure. And it seems to be like we're going to give that head coach some time. We're going to give that GM some time to build things.
And also, I'm sure part of the discussion, I'm guessing. I'm not going to pretend like some of these guys you see on YouTube who say they have inside information, which isn't even inside information.
No.
That I also think that part of the process is telling somebody like Ben Johnson, hey, look, we got to figure out the quarterback position. We want you to come in and help us do that along with the new GM. And so that means we know year one, it's going to be a heavy lift. So they will get grace. They will get a little extra time to do that, to say, hey, once you get the quarterback, the clock's ticking, man. And then you're right back to where you need to be, which is like, you got to win. But I think in the interim, there's going to be some grace there. But we're going to talk more about this, obviously, in the coming weeks and on shows and get your calls on it. Got a lot of calls today, too. It's going to be a marathon show going once a week now, but we're going to get to those because we want to. By the way, a lot of you called in before a lot of the news, so the calls were a little dated. So if your call's not on, it might be just because you called a little bit earlier. We're going to be having shows on Thursday now, so the best time to call and leave a message would be Wednesday. So just a thought there. We're also going to put together some fan roundtable shows. We're going to have you guys on with us. That's right. On video, on audio. We're going to do that pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. Right now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Tom Brady's influence. Some of you are still having a hard time dealing with that, but we're going to talk about it. I went as far as to say is that Tom Brady could be the savior of this franchise when it's all said and done. And I'll tell you why when we come back here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Our video brought to you by the good folks at BetUS. Don't go anywhere. All right. Good one. At least we have something to talk about. Crappy season, nothing to talk about. All right. In 3, 2, and 1. Is Tom Brady the savior of the Las Vegas Raiders franchise? That's what we're talking about in segment number 2 here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you. Our video, if you're watching us, by the way, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Even if you're watching us, a lot of you watch us only on YouTube. That's where you get the show, and we appreciate that very much. But just go ahead and subscribe on the audio side. Help our friends out at Odyssey. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. I also recommend the great Odyssey app. It's free. You can listen to not only podcasts, but you can listen to all the radio stations across the country, no matter where you're at. We have great sports stations all over, so do that as well. Our video brought to you by the good folks at BetUS. So thank you to them again. What a great season we've had with them. So Mo Moten and Scott Branson back with you. Mo, all right, Tom Brady. Now I'm gonna flash this up here. I wrote a piece up on Sportsnot on what was it? Oh, on Wednesday about Tom Brady, the savior the Las Vegas Raiders have been waiting for. And I laid out the case here, and I want to get your reaction to it too. Laid out the case here that Tom Brady is a lot closer to a Al Davis type archetype than anybody who's ever been in the Raiders organization since he passed. Now, I know the last few years of Mr. Davis's life, he was ill and things kind of went downhill a little bit. That happens. But the case I made here, Mo, and I think we've already seen it come to fruition to a point, is that Tom Brady's brand, as we mentioned before on the show, is winning. Tom Brady comes in. Ben Johnson would not be, as far as Albert Breer has said, Schefter has said, a lot of the national insiders have said that Ben Johnson wasn't necessarily even considering interviewing for the Raiders until Tom Brady, through an intermediary, stepped in, asked him to, hey, talk to us. We want to talk to you. And now you're getting the reports, true or not, that he's kind of the leader in the clubhouse, so to speak. And I look at that and I said, the impact already for an organization that has not been able to capture any degree of success that the franchise had last in 2002 when they went to the Super Bowl again and lost to the Buccaneers. And so I made the case in this piece up on Sportsnot, Mo, that Tom Brady you shouldn't doubt him, not because he gets a pass and you instantly think he's going to succeed, because we don't know. He's got to prove it out. I'm not naive. I understand that the proof will be in the pudding, so to speak, on the field, how this team performs eventually. But you can't deny already that he's had a great impact, and moving forward, having him involved with the franchise and involved with the football side is giving this team a boost it hasn't had in decades.
Absolutely. I'm not gonna count my chickens before they hatch, but the fact that that the Raiders weren't even on Ben Johnson's radar until Tom Brady's sell job tells you the pull that he has. And I compared it to when I was on Twitter, I compared it to when you see these people with these Instagram filters on their photos, right?
Yeah.
So if they had their normal regular photo, no filter on it, you wouldn't be interested. But you put that Instagram filter on them, oh, I'm willing to meet up with that person. It's the same. It's this very similar situation with the Raiders and Tom Brady. Before Tom Brady, people probably look at that job. People still do. The outsiders still look at this job as, oh, you want to go to the Raiders dysfunction, turnover, firing coaches, firing GMs every other year. And even with all of that, you put the Tom Brady filter on. He makes a move. As I said, I called it a chess move, firing Tom Telesco to make the job more attractive. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, maybe this job isn't too bad. Tom Brady's behind the scenes pulling the strings. They're going to be a little more stable, you would assume, under Tom Brady, because he's not going to allow it to have so much turnover. And all of a sudden, you're looking at it completely different. And I see your point in saying the brand of winning. Just win, baby, under Al Davis. Brady, 7 rings, most accomplished quarterback in my lifetime, arguably the most successful quarterback in NFL history. His brand is obviously winning. So there are some comparisons there. Now, people will say, well, Al Davis, the architect of the franchise, football mind. Brady, we don't know how he is as a scout, how he is at picking GMs, and we get all of that. But we're saying the fact that he has this pull around the league, the networking, the connections to make things happen, like bringing in the hottest candidate in the hiring cycle, is a step in the right direction.
And Mo, this is where we talked last. The hottest candidate last year was undoubtedly. I mean, Ben Johnson was there, but it was Harbaugh, right? The Raiders didn't even talk to him. Whether he didn't want to or they didn't want to, we don't know the truth there. We've heard reports this week that they didn't want to even talk to him. They didn't even call, right? I forgot what that was on McAfee or something. I forgot who it was on. But anyway, we don't know if that's true. But that's the difference here. And this is where I was having a conversation with one of our listeners via text. And he was kind of pushing back on me a little bit after reading the story. And I said, listen, this is about the gravity of Tom Brady. Think about this from a planet perspective. It's gravitational pull. Okay. And to your point, Mo, we don't know if he can succeed scouting players, but here's what I can tell you is if he is running the part of the organization around football and choosing good people to make those decisions. Now, the GM job, we have John Spytek from Tampa, a guy I like a lot. John Eric Sullivan from the Packers, the assistant GM of the Chargers, Chad Alexander. Not sure about him, don't know much about him. Another Charger guy, weird. And Sheldon White, who is another great dark horse candidate to watch because Sheldon White is the Steelers' pro scouting director. And if you see how well the Steelers do, I know the quarterback situation there's a mess, but man, they do excellent drafts. I believe, right? You see those guys that they've put together. So great. This tells me, look at these guys that they have started to talk to. Now, I'm sure there's some credit to going to this Raiders front of house somewhere too, as well, not just Brady. But this is why Brady works, and this is why he doesn't have to be the GM like John Lynch is, a former player who went on to have great success. Okay, or Ozzie Newsome, same thing. Tom Brady may never be the GM. He might be just the guy, for lack of a better term, the CEO, the president of football operations, whatever it is, that just puts things together and puts in the right pieces to win. How are you going to argue against him succeeding? Now, I know people said Michael Jordan didn't do well in basketball, and that I get that. But Tom Brady, if there's a couple things I would trust him with, and that is one, his desire to win and not be embarrassed to be associated with the Raiders, right? Two would be quarterbacks, duh. And number three would be the network of connections, like you said, Mo. And to me, this situation, Tom Brady, this is why I say he's like Al Davis. Al Davis would do anything to win. And I believe Tom Brady will be the same way.
People like to bring up the Michael Jordan comparison. Well, you saw what Michael Jordan did to the Hornets. He's a great player. Where did that leave them? And I say this, that you go on social media, people always veer to the extreme negative on things. Okay, but what if he's Jerry West? Jerry
Right.
West, great basketball player. What did he do as an executive? Go look at his resume. So he could be Michael Jordan, but he could be Jerry West, but he could be somewhere in between. And you know what? That's okay if he helps the Raiders, as I said, get on the right track with a head coach who could develop a quarterback. Because let's be honest, Tom Brady doesn't, after this head coaching GM search process, Tom Brady could step back and focus on his Fox job or whatever he's got going in his life, because you would assume that he's going to let the GM and head coach do their jobs, right? So Tom Brady, because someone did ask a good question in my Bleacher Report Live, do I think that Tom Brady is going to be involved in, the draft and picking players and free agency? I'm sure he'll give his advice, but a person who, and Anders can chime in on this one, but a good businessman knows, a good person when it comes to organizational structure knows when to insert himself or herself and then when to step back and let people do their jobs. As I said, Tom Brady is not a scout. Let the GM and the scouting department do that job. Tom Brady is not a play caller. Let Ben Johnson or whoever you hire as a head coach and their coach staff do that job. What Tom Brady is good at, networking, as I said, networking and connections, getting people in the door, selling them on the Raiders. And that's what he's done so far with getting Ben Johnson in the door. As we've noted, as Schefter's noted, as Breer's noted, Ben Johnson wouldn't even talk to the Raiders if it wasn't for Tom Brady pulling him in.
Right. And the other thing to think about here too is, and I understand people look at it the scope of a team perspective, but there's a laundry list of former players, not as great a player as Tom Brady, who've gone on to great success in professional football in the executive branch, so to speak, right? Troy Vincent, head of operations for all of the NFL, right? There's all these different players who've done it, and you've talked about ones that are more associated with team like Ozzie Newsome and those guys, absolutely correct. But there's a lot of executives. Tom Brady's a smart dude, right? I mean, you see what he does, you see his businesses, all that stuff. But to me, that's the difference. And I think that for those people who are resistant to it, my question is, do you want them to do the same thing they've been doing? Because where's that got you? It's got you nowhere. So even if Tom Brady's moderately successful, which I don't think there's any chance of because the guy has that drive, it's better than where you're at right now. So we'll see. But I do think that it's already working. Somebody asked me before we went on the air, Mo, about, do you think it's going to help with free agents? Yes. I don't know how much yet because we don't know what his involvement will be. And then because of the Fox situation, we don't know how much he'll be around the team and in the building, so to speak, even during the offseason. But yes, again, it's the gravitational pull of the personality. This is why when this all started happening, the purchase of the team, the minority stake, I said, this is a big deal because people just want to be around him. Okay. They just want to be around him. You saw after, and God rest his soul, you saw after Kobe retired from the NBA, he was helping coach his kids. He's doing all kinds of, people wanted to be around him when he played, when he was out of playing. So Tom Brady is the same way. It's going to be really interesting, I think, Mo, how this unfolds. And I'm really interested in how all the national media, too, did you see this right before we go to the break here and get to your calls, is now questioning the ethics of Brady being able to broadcast the Lions game this weekend and be interviewing the coach, which I find interesting because suddenly people are worried about the Raiders, guys. When's the last time that happened?
Yeah, it's funny now. People are like, "Oh, this is tampering." Oh, why would it? Now I've Scott not even a month ago. People feel like the people forgot the Raiders even existed as a football team. Now it's like, oh, he's pulling too many strings for the Raiders, and this is a tampering. This is a conflict of interest. Now all of a sudden, people remember the Raiders are a franchise, but now that because the hottest candidate is now linked to their team. But really quick, Scott, before we go to the break, as far as Brady's pull is concerned, just think about your normal life, right? You're trying to find a job with an organization. You're one of the top people in your industry. Don't you want to be connected to or talk to someone who's successful versus someone who's not so successful? So if there was a company out there that's top of the industry for years, and comparing it to Brady's winning 7 Super Bowls, so let's say that company's been at the top of the industry for 7 decades. Wouldn't you want to at least talk to those people to see, okay, what do they have going? Now, I know Brady hasn't had any success in the front office, but you're willing to hear that person out. You think people would want to talk to Steve Jobs when he was alive? You just think about the pull, as you said, the gravity there, that you want to be associated with winning, success, progress, people who have done some amazing things in their life that are associated with your business or with your line of work. So you have to understand that the effect of Tom Brady is already taking hold. You just hope that the Raiders can pull a quality candidate, and I think they will. Again, even if it's not Ben Johnson, I just want to caution, as you said, it's not Ben Johnson or bust. If Ben Johnson doesn't get the job, I still think the Raiders will get a quality candidate through this process.
And even if it is Pete Carroll, I like you, and I know some people hate it, and I'm not saying you should like it, but my logic is if it's Pete Carroll and he brings a good young coaching staff with him, which I would think the Raiders would require, saying, "Hey, Pete, you're 73. You might look like you're 50 and be in shape of a good 50-year-old, but we need to think about the future. We want to bring you in here, get the ship righted, but we need to make sure you're bringing in the right people so that we have somebody in place, perhaps."
Right.
So if that happens, don't give up and think it's going to be just a retread coach. I don't think it would be. So we'll see. I just think that, again, the Tom Brady involvement here, things are going to go different, and we'll see how different they are. And it's going to be fascinating to watch the next several weeks, especially once we get past the Super Bowl. If Ben Johnson goes all the way to the Super Bowl, if he doesn't go to the Super Bowl, if they lose this weekend, who knows? But things will happen, I think, in succession with some of these coaches who are still in the playoffs, and we will see. But I'm fascinated by it, and we will continue to watch it. All right. That's going to do it for segment number 2. Segment number 3 coming up. It is the Raider Nation Mailbag with your phone calls. Mo and Scott, we're talking to you. Don't go anywhere.
Enough of hearing us talk about the Raiders. It's time to hear from you.
Any Oakland Raider fan, Las Vegas Raider fan,
Stand up. On this edition of the Raider Nation Mailbag.
That black hole rocking and rolling.
Don't be a wallflower. Be a part of the show. Leave your question or message by calling 702-900-7869. That's 702-900-7869. Or drop us an email at mail@silverandblacktoday.com.
Oh, yeah, we're back. Ready for that shot of energy that our listeners and viewers give us with their texts and their voicemails. You can be a part of it. 702-900-7869. Again, we're going on Thursdays now during the off season, so best time to call would be Wednesday to leave your message. That way you're up to date and I can get all the calls in. Sometimes it's tough to go back and get them. So just do that. 702-900-7869. Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your audio. And don't forget to rate and review. We appreciate that very much. Also, our video, which you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram, Twitch, X, Facebook. I mean, we're everywhere, Mo. We're just in every channel we can possibly be in. Wherever you're watching us, make sure you subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that notifications bell. That way you get the latest video and you get notified every time we have a new one. So thank you to that. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you. And we're going to get to these calls here. A lot going on. You guys have a lot to say. Mo, what do you think the mood is? Now, I've heard a little bit of some of these calls, not all of them. I like to go on the air with some of them not hearing them just to see what happens. But what do you think the mood's going to be?
I think it's going to be mostly positive, and there's some of them are going to share the cautious optimism that we have for the head coaching search with Ben Johnson associated with the Raiders. But I think there's going to be some, well, if it's not Ben Johnson, then it's going to, then what? What happens? And there's a bit of, I feel like I'm going to be disappointed because I don't believe really that Ben Johnson is actually interested in the job.
Yeah. There's some people who won't believe it because they're skeptical. They have been injured, and I'm going to call it football PTSD, right? You have football PTSD from your love of the Raiders. And I understand that. So for those of you who aren't ready to jump on that yet, I'm okay with that. I understand you and it's like being a jilted lover. Until the person proves, you're just not going to believe it. So I get that and I respect it. And we'll hear if anybody has anything to say. All right, we're going out to Jersey, New Jersey. This is John from Jersey.
Hey, Scott and Mo, John from Jersey calling in. It's been a little while. I try to only call in when I actually have something to say. And I'm calling in now pretty much as soon as I saw the news about Telesco getting fired. And I got to say, this one's frustrating for me. I felt good about moving on from Antonio Pierce. I agreed with pretty much everything you guys said about Pierce throughout the season. It was obvious to me that as much as a lot of us wanted to like the guy, he just was not equipped to be a head coach in the NFL. That being said, Telesco nailed the draft, got the first bona fide star with first-round pick that I've ever seen the Raiders draft, maybe. I mean, going back to Khalil Mack at least. But I just don't – so many people talking about the coach this year talked about stability and continuity. And with the coaching situation, I was with you guys, but I didn't find that argument to be very persuasive. On the general manager side, though, I just don't think that you can move on from a GM every 1 to 3 years. And I do not want to hear when they bring in the next guy, if they start shipping out good players, and I'm worried about what that'll mean for Max Crosby, because I don't want to hear about, oh, well, it wasn't his guy. Oh, well, it's not his guy. That's not the guy he drafted. Good teams draft good players, and then they use them to build themselves into better teams. Good teams don't do, and I'm sorry, what John Gruden did, come in and say, well, these aren't my guys. I didn't necessarily want them. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. I'm going to move on from them. I'm certainly worried about what this means now moving forward. I do not want to see another tandem GM head coach come into the Raiders, whether that's a John Gruden type situation where he's the de facto coach and GM, or a McDaniel situation where you bring in a coach and then you let him bring his buddy along to be the GM too, because I think it is much healthier for a team to have some debate, some disagreement, and to have one person focused on personnel while somebody else is focused on coaching. Not too much else to say right now. I'm worried about what this means. I really liked that they retained Telesco, and I said to my wife, they did what I wanted them to do for once. I should have given it 24 hours because they always find a way to make that not the case. But Scott and Mo, thanks for everything you guys do. Great as always. Look forward to hearing the show.
All right, John from the Garden State. John, great call. And Mo, this is a great call because I think we got to point out the difference, and I want you to explain this to folks how this is different because Telesco's gone, and the idea that the coach and GM can come in together does not mean it's a McDaniels Ziegler situation or a John Gruden situation. Explain to folks how this one's different.
Well, first, it's different because the two top guys the first two guys that they interviewed, John Eric Sullivan of the Packers front office and John Spytek of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he's one of the assistant general managers of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is not if they hire one of those two guys, it's not a situation where these guys have been buddies for decades. So Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler go back to I believe their collegiate years, right? Mm-hmm. They went to college together. So they had been friends for quite some time. If the Raiders let's say they hired Ben Johnson and John Spytek. John Spytek has more of a history with Tom Brady because they were at Michigan together for I believe a year. So they go all the way back. Spytek doesn't go all the way back with Ben Johnson. There is no overlap there. They didn't even work together in the same organization. So I would assume Spytek coming from the Buccaneers and Ben Johnson coming from the Lions, they're going to have a difference in opinions on how to build a football team. But I also wanted to get to John's point about firing Telesco. And I think the one thing that he's missing here, and this is not your fault, John, because maybe you didn't hear this, but the reasoning behind firing Tom Telesco was the fact that Brady and their brain trust thought Tom Telesco wasn't a appealing candidate for the top appealing GM for the top candidates, meaning he wasn't going to attract top candidates to come in and say, yeah, I want to work with Tom Telesco. So if you're thinking of it for the long term, would you want to keep Tom Telesco, who, yes, had a great draft class, but if you're going to get a lower level, a low quality head coach, would you be fine with that? Because that's how the Raiders felt. Based on Schefter's report, they felt if we keep Tom Telesco, we're not going to get the best candidate for this head coaching job.
Right.
So what they did was they sacrificed Tom Telesco with the idea that we're going to get a better candidate and we can attract better candidates by saying, look, we got rid of Tom Telesco. You can come in with the GM, align yourself with this GM, not necessarily your buddy, and you're going to agree on everything, but the timeline is going to be different where you don't have to worry about, well, the GM has been here for quite a while. We're going to fire the GM but keep you. No, you and the GM are going to have a long leeway, a long leash, so to speak, to build this football team in your vision. So I think it's different from hiring Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, who were buddies that came in together, versus hiring a new GM and new head coach who are coming from different organizations. Let's remember Ziegler and McDaniels both came from the Patriots. This is very different.
Yeah, very different way to sum that up. I appreciate it, John. Great call. Now, I figure we get it in early just to keep you guys all pumped up. It's Jacob in Fresno.
Yes. And this is Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? So, yeah, we're at a point in time where not only is AP gone, but Tommy Telescopes, this guy, nobody called that. That was kind of strange, don't you think? I mean, he drafts Brock Bowers, the guy who everyone was saying, why would the Raiders draft the tight end in the first round? And he turns out to be, the greatest tight end of all time, and it's only his first season. I know that's a bit of hyperbole, but still, he did a great job in that first round. And then you look at the second round, we got Jackson Powers Johnson. The name alone, Powers Johnson, you kind of just got to salute the guy, but we got that, and another starter in the third round, and then he's fired. First year, great draft, and I wonder, does it all just go back to the quarterback at this point? Is Tom Telesco no longer the general manager of the Raiders because he couldn't get the quarterback? Or is it just purely a Brady, Seymour type thing where these guys are saying they're not terrible, but they're just not our guys? And I'm thinking maybe that could be it. But there's another part of me that thinks, no, I think we have an opportunity to get somebody, and Tommy T said no. I have a sneaking suspicion. Now, I want you guys to tell me, am I just going like off on a tangent here that doesn't make much sense? Or is there maybe some smoke to this fire? Now tell me, is it possible that Antonio Pierce was flirting with the idea to give up 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and maybe Devontae Adams, or maybe not him, I don't know if he really likes him, but something like that, a package like that, to go and get Jaden Daniels. And then Mark Davis sees, because Tom Telesco would obviously say, no, we're not doing that. I never trade up to get a quarterback, right? So Davis sees that, and he sees the success of Jaden Daniels and says, okay, well, Tom Telesco's no good either. Do you think that might have happened? Am I just kind of creating my own thing here? Maybe? Who knows? All right. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to run out of time. You guys take it easy. Go Rays.
If Jacob ever has a call that doesn't run out of time, it will be shocking. But man, thank you. Another great call. And I think you touched on this after John and Jersey's call, which was, why was Tom Telesco let go? And I think your reasoning, Mo, around making it more appealing for the new candidate coming in at coach was true. But we did also see, and again, grain of salt, Adam Schefter, which I know a lot of people, because of Al Davis admonishing him back in the day at the Hall of Fame about being, working for the Broncos and all that kind of stuff, and the fact that he's not very Raider friendly. But Schefter said that he had it on good authority that the Raiders never even called Washington about trading for Jaden Daniels. Now, if that's true, could that factor into, I don't know, maybe Tom Telesco wanted to, and Mark Davis said, no, we're not going to do it. We don't know the story there. So it's hard to tell. But I also know maybe Washington just said, we're not entertaining any offers. So why would you call? Right? I mean, you could still call. I think that it goes back to what you said, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, Mo, but I think it made the job as head coach more appealing. And I think this front office needed to be restructured so that Brady, Davis, the new GM, and the coach were all on the same page.
Right. Usually you think general managers get fired because they did a horrible job. And we all know that as far as the draft is concerned, Tom Telesco hit that out of the park, right? It looks like you're going to have an all-world talent in Brock Bowers and a couple of starters after him. But as I said, you're looking at it from the short term. Looking at it from the long term, because the Raiders are going to need a new head coach, you're thinking, okay, fine, we got a GM who hit on some picks, but how are we going to nail the head coaching position? What did we say over the last 2 weeks, Scott? We said that if the Raiders get the head coaching position right, it makes it a lot easier to then build a roster and have a competitive contender. And I think the Raiders felt like, and this is not just my words, this is coming from Adam Schefter, that they weren't going to get a quality candidate with Tom Telesco in the seat. Apparently, according to Adam Schefter, he wasn't appealing enough for the top candidate. So again, are you willing to go with Tom Telesco, who had a good draft, and then get a D-rate, a tier 4 head coach and take that chance? Or are you willing to fire Tom Telesco to take a big swing and potentially bring in one of the best candidates in the hiring cycle? If firing Tom Telesco ultimately gets you Ben Johnson, I think it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So great call, Jacob. Appreciate it. Now we're going out to Stockton, California, just up the road, up 99 from Jacob in Fresno. Here is Aaron.
Hey, Gully and Mo, this is Aaron calling in from Stockton. I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents on the current state of the team, the organization, the whole coaching search. To me, man, it just feels like, the clean slate was needed. And I think that in order for them to kind of attract who they feel like they need to get in the building, they needed to be able to let them come in and let them kind of survey the landscape and bring in their own GM, rather than trying to tie them to Tom Telesco. My 2 cents, just, I feel like because there is no definitive quarterback out there that's going to just immediately change the franchise around, and they definitely They need a head coach that's also going to be a forward-thinking play caller and a quarterback enhancer, a play caller who's going to raise the floor of what you can do at quarterback, because they're going to take a lot of the load off of them. That way you don't necessarily have to go out and have a top 5 guy playing quarterback. Very similar to what Ben Johnson has done in Detroit and Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay. One thing I wouldn't be surprised about is, let's say it is Ben Johnson. I really would not be shocked if Ben Johnson is intrigued on having a Justin Fields on, a 1 to 2 year deal, a guy who's not going to cost him a lot of money, who he's seen in that division for a few years, coaching from the other sideline. So, want to pop in. Love the show. You guys keep doing what you're doing. Take it easy.
Aaron in Stockton, great call, man. Thanks for calling in. Make sure you do it again. I love when we get new callers, good callers, especially. We don't have bad callers, but I appreciate it, Aaron. He brings up some good points there too, especially about the quarterback situation. Saw reports on Wednesday that said that when Ben Johnson was interviewing with the Commanders, he wanted Sam Howell as quarterback, so maybe Sam Howell will come to the Raiders. Listen, take that all with a grain of salt. In that situation, different. They didn't know what they were doing with that draft pick, and he didn't know what they were doing. So who knows if that's true or not. But Aaron brings up some good points, Mo.
Yeah, and then one point that I didn't hammer home about the firing Tom Telesco was, we all know the Raiders' quarterback room isn't very appealing compared to the other teams on the market. So you have to think of it from the perspective of how could the Raiders have made their job more attractive? Yeah, we don't have the quarterback in place like the Jaguars and the Bears and the Patriots before they hired Mike Vrabel, right? But we offer something different than the other teams can offer. And that's, again, as Aaron said, and we've been saying, coming in with a clean slate along with the GM. What I will say about the head coaching position is basically, Aaron said he agrees with us in saying that if you get the head coaching position right, and he is your offensive play caller, now you don't necessarily need to have that home run pick in the draft. You don't necessarily need to spend $100 million plus dollars, or $100 million. Now it's like $50 million a year on a top quarterback that hits free agency. Now you can get a B level quarterback and raise him to an A minus or an A level. He talked about Liam Cohen, Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, Ben Johnson before. Let's remember what Jared Goff was before he connected with Ben Johnson. Now he went to a Super Bowl with the Rams, but he had Sean McVay, but he wasn't the same player you're seeing right now. He's more efficient and turn the ball over a little less. Still turns the ball over. We saw that 5 interception game, I believe, against the Texans, but they still won that game, by the way. But he's an elevated quarterback now under Ben Johnson. So again, you get your player under the Andy Reids of the world, even Sean McVay, who I mentioned, you're gonna get a better product on the field as far as the offense is concerned. As I said, if you stuck with Tom Telesco and you get a tier 5 head coach, that head coach may not be able to uplift your quarterback and that offense, and you're stuck with that, and then you're probably firing your GM and head coach in a short order. So getting the top hire as a play caller is, again, the start for the Raiders. Hopefully it's Ben Johnson. I think they should go with an offensive guy. Not discounting Pete Carroll because he's built quality stats. I think that's a quality, as I've said, that is overlooked. Even if they do hire a defensive guy like a Pete Carroll, if that person can build a quality coaching staff, bring in a quality offensive coordinator, the next brilliant mind, you should be all for that.
Yep. There you go. Appreciate it. Aaron in Stockton. Now we're going all the way to New Orleans, Mo. Got to go all the way back.
Derek Carr
Big
country.
Easy. Site of the Super Bowl. Here is Raider Vengeance.
Hey, Mo. Hey, Scott. This is Raider Vengeance calling from the 504 in New Orleans. I just had a quick comment about the Raiders coaching and GM search that's going on this week. I know there's a bunch of interviews that have been announced as well as inquiries we've made. And one thing I am thinking about is interviewing. I work in IT and I've interviewed with companies before, and sometimes there's, on the outside, a company looks great branding, online, you do your research, great reputation. But once you get in that interview, if you're savvy enough and you ask the right questions, you can quickly discover that something might stink, whether there's dysfunction or politics or some kind of toxicity or a power struggle. And that's one thing that I'm thinking about this week is, there's a lot of these candidates that are interviewing with multiple teams. And I'm just wondering what our interview process looks like, even knowing that, Tom Brady is, kind of orchestrating this. I still have some concerns. I know there was reports that the consulting firm Korn Ferry was used to help kind of put this together. I know that they have a reputation. So I hope we are kind of leaning on those consultants to make sure that this is professional and normal and not weird and, what we're used to with, being a Raiders fan all these years and hearing the stories that have come out. So that's really just a comment about what's going on this week. And either way, Mo, Scott, love what y'all do. Keep doing it. I listen every week, and I'm looking forward to an exciting offseason. And go Raiders.
There we go. Raider Vengeance in New Orleans. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Send poor boys immediately.
Scott,
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off, Scott,
No,
but
please go.
I have to get to some important business because
Yes.
if this is the same Raider Vengeance on Twitter, let me know, please, because Raider Vengeance recently reached out to me, Scott.
Yeah.
And he apologized to you. And he said, he may have been a little too emotional after games. You blocked them on Twitter. I'm going to play Tom Brady. I'm going to be the intermediary here and say, Scott, if there was some issues with Raider Vengeance on Twitter, let him out of Twitter jail. He's a good guy. I believe he's been on my BR Lives. He's calling into the show. But I'm going to be the Tom Brady here and say, Raider Vengeance is a good guy. I'll vouch for him. And you heard the call. Very level-headed, rational call there. So I just want to mend fences between Scott and Raider Vengeance. If this is the same Raider Vengeance, get back to us. Let us know. But as far as the context of the call, I can't speak on the process of it because I'm not in the room, and we probably won't know the process of how the interviews are going because they should keep that under wraps. But I would assume that it's gone well because Ben Johnson is still a hot candidate linked to the Raiders. I would think every insider is now linking Ben Johnson to the Raiders' job, meaning that initial Zoom meeting probably went well. I'm not saying that because the insiders are connecting Ben Johnson to the Raiders that it's going to happen, but the fact that all the leads are blowing in the same direction tells you that interview process went well for both sides at the very least. Again, doesn't mean he's going to pick the Raiders and take that job, but you would assume that with all of these top insiders linking him to Las Vegas, that things went well and they hit it off, and the Raiders at least have a good chance of hiring him. So you would come. My summary from that is process seems to be going well, and they seem to be doing the right things and talking about the right things during their interviews.
Thank you, Raider Vengeance. And I don't see him on my block list, but you send me his X thing, Mo, when we get off the air, and I'll check on it and see. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he got caught up in one of those days. We'll see.
Yeah, of course. Happens.
Yes. All right. There you go. Great call, Raider Vengeance. All right. Now we're going out to North Carolina. We're keeping east of the Mississippi. Here is, I guess New Orleans is technically the Mississippi. But anyway, here's Tommy in North Carolina. Oops. Tommy, there you are.
Scott, Mo, hope you guys are doing well. We are all in off-season mode at this point. It is Tommy from North Carolina once again. Mo, I did just see on your Twitter you're doing some digging for the head coaching. Would love to hear what candidates that you would see as a fit. I know that they've gone on to, I believe, interview Pete Carroll, which, okay, his veteran, he's got a pedigree in this league. He's won a Super Bowl. That stuff matters. I think a lot of us are on the Ben Johnson train, but as you said, Mo, it's not Ben Johnson or bust. And you, Scott, you both preached that. My biggest question is, what do the Raiders do at defensive coordinator? For me, I love Patrick Graham. I love what he did. I think he had the right players in his defensive system to make it work. And for me, I want them to hire the defensive coordinator where the players fit the scheme and not the other way around. You know, we've seen that before. Like, remember Nnamdi Asomugha signed with the Eagles, and he was not as good because he's not a zone coverage corner. I just love to see a defensive coordinator that the players fit what he wants to do, so that way you don't have this atrocious defense that just doesn't work. I think there's a lot of good pieces in place on this defense. Max Crosby, Wilkins. I'm a big fan of Spillane. I think the Raiders, they've given me as a fan what I've always wanted is a top 15 defense. And it's been really fun to watch, and I just hope that kind of trend continues. Would love to see, obviously, you know, there's no telling like what that could look like and who the head coach picks for their staff, but just any thoughts you guys have on the defensive coordinator thing. Anyways, go Raiders.
There you go. There's Tommy in North Carolina. Good call. And he talked about defensive coordinator there. Let's say, just for the sake of discussion, Mo, that Ben Johnson is the Raiders' new coach. What can we think about from? It goes back to relationships here. You know, who does he do now in Detroit? I know. Look, he's been there for a while now. Aaron Glenn uses kind of that Fangio scheme mixed with man coverage. So they play zone, but they play man. They play man more than anybody in the NFL, by the way. And it's all about forcing offensive mistakes, playing really good in the red zone, which you see the Lions do. And they don't blitz a ton. They're very selective with it. Do you think that's going to influence Ben Johnson, or could it be something completely different?
It could be something completely different because, like I said, remember, he's been coaching on the pro level for 12 years.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of time in Miami and Detroit. So when you hire a head coach who's never had that position before, a coordinator who's never had the position of a head coach, you're thinking of, okay, who has he worked with? So you obviously start with Detroit. Aaron Glenn is going to probably take the Jets job or the Saints job. So you would look at maybe someone under Aaron Glenn, who's an assistant of, you know, a defensive line coach, a cornerbacks coach, something like that. You're looking at the Lions coaching staff. And you also, as I said, you want to peel it back to his time in Miami. Who did he rub shoulders with in Miami as well? Because let's be honest, the NFL and these coaching staffs, it's all about connections and who you know, who you worked with and who you know. And that's where you start. But I wouldn't rule out him picking someone that is outside of the Dolphins, Detroit Lions network that he's had with those two franchises. It's really hard to say right now, simply because while he has been coaching for 12 years, he is a younger head coach. So you don't really know what his inner connections are until a coach pops up and you're like, this is his quarterback's coach, this is his running backs coach. So it's more of a wait and see type of thing. But the first thing I wanted to get to, not the first thing, but now the second thing I want to get to is, I know a lot of fans are a little worried about losing Patrick Graham because they're worried about, okay, change of scheme. Defensive coordinator is going to bring in his style of defense. And how do we know all the players that played well under Patrick Graham are fit for the new defensive coordinator? And that's just something you're going to have to risk. You know, would you rather keep Patrick Graham as a head coach, or would you rather bring in Ben Johnson and take a risk? Because I understand the trepidation about losing Patrick Graham, but good players are able to play well in multiple schemes. So you would assume that Max Crosby is scheme proof. Max Crosby is going to, let's remember, Max Crosby was drafted under the Gruden regime. He's been through multiple, not coordinators, but he's been through multiple regimes. A good player, a great player is going to be a great player in whatever scheme he's in. Now, the Nate Hobbs of the world, the Malcolm Kuntzes of the world, there's some uncertainty there because you don't know how that new defensive coordinator is going to view those players. And we value those players as quality football players, but there could be change over there. I would just prepare yourself for that.
Yeah. And remember, this Raiders defense, there's nothing wrong with change. This Raiders defense was middle of the road. It's not like it's a top 5 defense, guys. I mean, they were 15th, right? So that's not bad. And it's not great either. So it's not like this defense was like, oh, you can't screw with the players on the I think scheme, like you said, players can play various schemes, and we'll see. And some of the players they already have there that you're not going to see go away, like Max Crosby, hopefully, you have they're scheme proof. They can play in anything you put them into. So, by the way, Jim O'Neill, former defensive backs coach under John Gruden is on Aaron Glenn's staff in at the Lions. So maybe he'll be back in Las Vegas too. Great guy. He's been on the show actually. So we'll see. But great call there. Now we're going on to Dominique, our buddy out in the Show Me State. Here's Dominique.
Hey, Scott Mo, this is Dominique from the Show Me State. Just something I've been paying attention to in these playoffs. Out of the remaining teams, you got 8 teams. 6 out of those 8 teams have mobile quarterbacks. C.J. Stroud, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and, of course, Patrick Mahomes. The only teams that don't are the Lions and Rams. But I think it's essential that we add a quarterback that adds that element of run and pass. Just like I said, just been looking at the games. It's something that you really have to have in today's NFL, and it just puts more pressure on the defense and to make plays when nothing is there, or to extend plays. Some kind of way, whether it's in the draft or free agency, I would love for us to add a quarterback that uses their legs. I don't want a Sam Darnold, but I mean, you look at a guy like Justin Fields, who I'm a big fan of. He's still 26 years old, I believe. No matter who our coach is, I think we should bring Justin Fields in. Or if not, you go in the draft and you get a guy that can just add that element. I think it just brings so much. And we haven't had that in a long time at the quarterback position. So just let me know what you guys think about that. I'll be listening as always. Appreciate you guys. Bye-bye.
All right, there's Dominique. Always great, and I hope Dominique will come on with us when we do the fan roundtable. On the show. He's great. But Mo, go ahead and grab or tell me what you think about Dominique and what he had to say there.
Dominique, if you're listening, you are obviously. I take it you're not an Aiden O'Connell guy. You're not one of those people that says Aiden O'Connell's going to be the week 1 starter based on what you just said about using the quarterback using his legs. Of course, I'm joking. Obviously not. But I agree with Dominique on this, and I've been pushing this for the past 2 weeks, Scott. I've been saying, and some people have pushed back on me on this one, I still think Justin Fields could be a quality start in this league. We saw Justin Fields win games with the Steelers before they benched him and moved on to Russell Wilson. You saw how that turned out, right? But I think if you get Justin Fields, I think Justin Fields can have a Baker Mayfield-like career turnaround. Now, Justin Fields wasn't a number 1 overall pick in this draft class. He was a first rounder. But I think if you get Justin Fields around a top play caller, you'll see a different version of Justin Fields. Just think about what Justin Fields has had in his career. He was in Chicago under Luke Getsy, right? So we know how bad of an offensive play caller Luke Getsy is or was with the Raiders. Then he goes to Pittsburgh, and as I said, he was winning football games. Wasn't putting up gaudy numbers or anything, but they were winning with him. He had Arthur Smith, but again, you see what Russell Wilson is in that offense, and the Steelers have struggled to find offensive continuity. They've been 16th or worse in scoring for the last 4 seasons. So again, get Justin Fields around Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, even Todd Monken. As I said, Todd Monken, I know he has Lamar Jackson now, but he had Raider fans put in Stetson Bennett in their mock drafts as a 3rd-round pick when he was at Georgia. Get Justin Fields around a quality play call, and I think you'll get a lot more out of him. I'm not saying Justin Fields is the answer to all the Raiders' quarterback problems, but I'd be willing to bring him in and give him a shot on a modest contract.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Again, it goes back to try things different. Take a shot. If you don't, what are you going to do? Like you said, roll with O'Connell and that's it, and that room stays where it's at? No. Kind of just take a swing. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Next is our buddy Yandog. Here's Yandog.
Todd, Mo, this is Yandog. I want to start off by saying that you two, I appreciate you guys accepting me on your podcast, and I really enjoyed being with you. I felt like family with you guys. And I just want to know that I'm glad also that the Raiders are cleaning house, and hopefully they get the right choices. I'm very happy for this situation. We could start over, and as far as coaching, I don't know who the hell we're going to get to coach, but I would love to have Ben Johnson in there. And I'm glad Brady's taking control of a lot of things, because if he didn't, we'd really be in a mess for 2025 too, guys. But, besides that, just like I said, I don't know when you guys are going to be off, like where you're not going to have the podcast, when you're going to be off. you could let me know or let your people know, then that'd be great, because I would talk to you all year round, because you guys are very, very good at what you do. So anyway, let's go Raiders, silver and black. Let's bring them back. Okay, Raider Nation. It's going to be, once again, we're going to be happy again. We're going to be up there where we belong. Okay, and that's about it, guys. And I thank you for your service, man. You guys do a great job. So talk to you soon. Over and out.
All right.
That's Yan Dog.
Yan Dog, I appreciate it, man, from up in New York.
We're familiar, Scott. Did you hear Yan Dog? We're part of the family now. The Yan Dog's been with us for quite some time.
Yes.
But I will say, I remember Yan Dog not being so happy about the Raiders winning those quote unquote meaningless games against the Jaguars and the Saints, and Yan Dog was down. It's good to hear Yan Dog back in good spirits. And looking at the future, at potentially a bright future for the Raiders. As we said on the previous segment, Scott, when's the last time multiple networks have been talking about the Raiders and actually concerned about what the Raiders are doing? As I said, people forgot the Raiders were a team in the NFL. You couldn't turn on a TV and pay anybody to talk about the Raiders. Yes. Now it's, the Raiders are tampering. What if they do get Ben Johnson? Bears fans aren't too happy about it. Seems like they're a little worried out there in the Windy City about Ben Johnson actually picking the Raiders job over the Bears job. So again, it doesn't mean immediate success. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to be, 13-4 the first year Ben Johnson gets there. But if you're telling me they're getting arguably the top play call in the hiring cycle, he's coming from an organization that also came from the depths of their division. Think about where the Lions were before Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell joined forces with Aaron Glenn as well. So you're coming from an organization who had to build from the ground up and is now trying to get to the Super Bowl. You want some of that in your organization as you're trying to build yourself back to excellence, back to prominence.
Yes. And, the other thing is with Chicago, I will remind them again, and I don't say this isn't a fan show, so I'm not trying to take a shot at Bears fans, but Ryan Poles is in trouble in Chicago as the GM. So if you're a coach, you look at that situation and say, I might have a new boss next year. Right. And so, like you said earlier, when we were talking about the Raiders situation with Tom Telesco being let go. So I think Bears fans they're looking at, we got the quarterback, we got an offense. Don't have an offensive line, and they have an okay roster. But then you look at that division, Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota. It's a tough division too. So listen, not everything, fans see it through a certain window, and I understand that, but good points, Mo. All right, now we move on. Usually I don't take calls when you don't leave your name. So leave your name and where you're calling from. But this was a good one on quarterbacks, Mo. This is a sort of draft question. I wanted to get this one in here. Not sure who you are. You have to claim your call later. But here we go. Here's a question on the draft and quarterbacks.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Midtown Mo. I wanted to kind of ask you guys some questions about second-round quarterbacks. If we missed out on the first round, what quarterbacks you felt were worthy of getting drafted, and who would be a good fit in Ben Johnson's, or even, I guess it depends on the OC on Pete Carroll, but especially in Ben Johnson's offense. And then also about the idea of maybe signing Zach Wilson. Maybe we can be a reclamation project for the Raiders. And the other question I had was, I'm a little worried about not signing any of our guys. Trevor and Coots, all those guys. Just want to see what you guys think. This is Real Raider from Albuquerque. Love you guys.
Oh, there we go.
Great show, man. Thanks.
Real Raider from Albuquerque. Thank you. It was just at the end. See, I didn't listen to the whole call. I just heard the beginning. So there you go. Mo, yeah, I think, you look at the situation with, if it is Ben Johnson, again, we're just, that's best case scenario. You think about some of the quarterbacks that are coming out. I'm starting to see, and again, mock drafts are mock drafts. It's very early. We don't know what's going to happen. But I even see some people having the Raiders at 6 getting Shedeur Sanders, who some people think will fall down the board. We'll see. But if they don't get a quarterback in the first round, when you start to look second, even third round, and you look at that kind of layered approach that Ben Johnson has, I like a guy. I think to me, like Jackson Dart is one of those guys. There's a couple others. Any names pop out for you?
Now, as far as second round prospects, I think if you could get Jalen Milroe in the second round, I think that's good value. People are going to cringe at Jalen Milroe because of the way his season went. Over at Bleacher Report, my guy Dane Parson has a scouting report out on Jalen Milroe. I would encourage you all to read that. If you just type in Jalen Milroe scouting report, Bleacher Report is one of the first reports that comes up. Just read that scouting report, and it may make you feel a little bit different about him as a prospect. But I think he's a target in the second round. I think he would be the ideal target in the second round, simply because may not be ready to start year one, but he has some tools that you can work with and mold. Has to be a lot more patient in the pocket and go through his reads. But if you can settle him down, I think you can get a serviceable, a pretty good starter out of him within 2 years. Now, a lot of Raider fans are going to talk about Jackson Dart. That's a popular candidate, and Dylan Gabriel, because those two names came up in my Bleacher Report live chat last night. And I will say that I'm not saying those two guys will be third round targets, but it's early in the process. After the Senior Bowl, after the Combine, there are going to be one or two prospects that shoot up boards. I'm not saying it's going to be Dylan Gabriel or Jackson Dart. I had Jackson Dart specifically as a third round pick, but if you get him at the end of the second round, I can't quibble with it. But as I said, you're worried about, can Jackson Dart make the plays that he made at Ole Miss on the pro level? Does that translate? Does his production translate? He definitely has the physical tools you can work with. Does he fit in Ben Johnson's system? I will have to take a closer look at that, to be honest. But as you look at Ben Johnson, what he has in Detroit, doesn't necessarily need an overly mobile quarterback. So he doesn't necessarily need a Jalen Milroe, who can get you the rushing yards and use his legs, as Dominic and the Show Me Steak probably likes. I don't know if he likes Milroe or not, but that's the type of quarterback Milroe is. But Jared Goff, I mean, not the most fleet of foot, not the most athletic quarterback. So if you're looking at quarterback prospects just from the outset, doesn't necessarily have to be a guy who's super athletic. Ben Johnson's proven that he can work with and get the most out of a less athletic quarterback. Doesn't mean you want Aiden O'Connell as your starter, though. Just put that out there.
No, and Jackson Dart actually can move. Like, to your point about Ben Johnson's offense, you don't need a highly mobile quarterback. You just need somebody who can move and use their legs if they need to. Right?
Functional mobility. There you go.
And I think obviously Milroe has that clearly. Dart has it as well. Howard at Ohio State. I know some of these names people go, but there's some guys out there, if you're getting into the third round, especially that they can take a flyer on, especially if that system's in play. All right.
Really quick, Scott. Real Raider did mention Zach Wilson. I just want to get to that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in New York, so I watched every Jet game with Zach Wilson. Real Raider, I'm here to tell you, you want no parts of that. You want no parts of that reclamation project. I would, like Dominique, I would prefer Justin Fields over Zach Wilson. And I've watched every Jet game with Zach Wilson. I just don't think he has it.
And fair or not, I've heard crickets from Raider Nation around the wanting to sign Sam Darnold situation. So
after that playoff loss.
But anyway, appreciate the call, my man. All right, now we're going out to Raider Izzy, our guy Raider Izzy.
What up, fellas? Raider Izzy. Happy Monday. All right, so I'm all in on Ben Johnson. All in. I know a lot of people are. I get it. There's so much to be excited about. This never happens for the Raiders. Tom Brady clearly has an influence. I'm going as far as talking to myself like, well, Joe Philbin was the first person to give Ben Johnson an NFL job. Like, that might mean something, even though he's basically not employed by the team anymore. I get it, but like, I'm amped up. I'm revved up about it. I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but that ship has sailed. Anyway, back to reality though. Even though we have Tom Brady, even though we have, a very different situation right now, I already have it in my head. It's going to be Pete Carroll, who's going to bring around like Darrell Bevel and Gus Bradley. That is such a typical Raider thing. I hate that idea. I hope I'm wrong. I love Pete Carroll. I'd be fine with it if he was bringing along like a lot of young talent. I would even want a young GM with him. He's had experience all throughout the NFL, all throughout college. Like, groom everyone. So I would like a young GM, a young offensive coordinator, and a young defensive coordinator with him. However, I'm terrified that it's going to be Pete Carroll, Darrell Bevel, or Shane Waldron, and Gus Bradley. So what I'd like you guys to do if possible, whoever else, if someone else is with you, if they can do it too, just tell me that's not going to happen, and tell me that like it's not going to be Darrell Bevel and Gus Bradley as our coordinators with Pete Carroll, and the old Raider way is just going to pop up after us getting so excited about this. So please, just talk me out of that, please. I would really appreciate it. And also, Mo, while we're at it, I know the team doesn't announce when they're doing interviews and stuff. They don't announce when they're doing interviews. They don't announce when they've completed interviews. I get it. I from the start have, with you, I know you're huge on Liam Cohen. I from the start thought it was going to be Spytek and Cohen. I really did. What have you heard anything more on that? I know you haven't. Again, they haven't apparently requested, but give me a shout out. Let me know. All right, love the show, guys. Later.
All right, there you go. Raider Izzy at Mo and Raider Izzy, we'd love to tell you it's not going to happen, but we can't because anything can happen. But he brings up a good point, Mo. You look at Pete Carroll, 2023, his final year in Seattle, offensive coordinator, as he mentioned, Shane Waldron, run game coordinator Chad Martin, defensive coordinator was Clint Hurt. And then you had on that roster a certain guy named Greg Olson at quarterback coach. You had who else? Andy Dickerson as the offensive line coach. Nate Carroll, that name sounds familiar, as well. So you look at some of these names, and while that was the last staff he had in Seattle, Mo, again, I think if Pete Carroll gets this job with Tom Brady involved, with a new coach, with a new GM coming in, I think there has to be this idea of, Pete, you're setting the table for when you step away eventually because you're 73 years old. And so I don't think there's a good chance, again, I could be proven wrong. I don't think there's a good chance that it's a bunch of retreads and, hey, just get the band back together.
So Raider Izzy, I'm going to speak directly to you on this one. Number one, I can't promise you that it won't be Pete Carroll because I think deep down in my Raider heart that if it's not Ben Johnson, priority one, I think Pete Carroll is option two. I really do think Pete Carroll's plan B there with Todd Monken being my dark horse candidate. But I will say I wouldn't if the Raiders do hire Pete Carroll, I wouldn't assume he's going to bring the old band back together and you're going to have Shane Waldron and Gus Bradley as your coordinator simply because Pete Carroll has also developed younger coaches as assistants. So you think, look around the league right now. Dan Quinn, former Pete Carroll, is a Pete Carroll disciple, head coach of the Washington Commanders. Dave Canales is a Pete Carroll disciple, now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. So you're hoping that Pete Carroll will come in with some new names that aren't Shane Waldron, who just got fired by the Bears as their offensive coordinator, and isn't Gus Bradley, who just got fired by the Indianapolis Colts as their defensive coordinator. I would hope that Pete Carroll brings in some fresh new names to develop behind him to become the head coach once he's ready to step away. I will also say about the Liam Cohen situation is, as you know, Raider Izzy, as a lot of people listen to the show know, Liam Cohen has been the guy that I've been eyeing and talking about for quite some time. He has been linked to the Jaguars job. I believe the Jaguars announced that they completed their interview with him at about like past midnight Thursday morning, which is kind of an odd timing. People had their jokes about, date goes late, must have went well. But I haven't heard anything about Liam Cohen being linked to the Raiders. But I will say that, let's say that the Raiders don't hire Ben Johnson, but they do hire John Spytek, who's the assistant general manager of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think then that would open the door for Liam Cohen if he's interested in the Raiders job. He may not be interested in the Raiders job. Maybe through back channels, they know he's not interested. Maybe that's why he's not on the request list. But if John Spytek is hired from Tampa Bay, you would think he thinks highly of Liam Cohen based on what he's done with that offense. The Buccaneers finished with a top 4 scoring and total yards offense this year with Baker Mayfield and without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans for a stretch of time. So hoping that if it's not Ben Johnson, somehow Liam Cohen finds his way on that interview list if it is John Spytek as the general manager of the Raiders.
Yeah, and you mentioned the kind of the Carroll coaching tree, and while yes, Gus Bradley is part of that, you also have Robert Saleh, right? You talked about Canales. So there's some young coaches out there, and I know Saleh's coming in for an interview with the Raiders today, I believe.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Again, that could also be a part of that. You could have, if Pete Carroll is the head coach and Robert Saleh comes as defensive coordinator, now with the offense we have to see, But clearly, I think there's a different mix there. I wouldn't expect just the same old, same old. So great call, Radio Izzy. All right, we're going to close the show, Mo, with our good buddy Tarek. Here's Tarek.
What's up, Scott and Mo? This is Tarek checking in with you guys from Chicago. Just watching the wild card round of the playoffs. It is nice to see the Chargers and the Donkeys get eliminated in 2 consecutive days. Certainly makes the weekend a little bit nicer, and I will definitely enjoy that with some ice cream. But it's also nice to see the Raiders have a more sophisticated approach to this offseason. I mean, they hired Jed Hughes from the firm Korn Ferry, which I've never heard of before, but this guy supposedly has a long history, not just in the NFL, but professional sports, of finding the right team, a fit for teams with regards to like leadership positions such as GMs and head coaches. I know that 2 days back we had Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Steve Spagnuolo interviewed on Zoom. We got Pete Carroll coming in tomorrow, Robert Saleh on Thursday. Still no word about Todd Monk. I don't think there's any chance we get Deion Sanders. I don't think there's the feeling is mutual as far as him wanting to coach for us. I don't think we have any interest in it at all. And I think I'm just kind of curious how it's going to play out this offseason. It's interesting to say the least, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to make some really sound decisions prior to free agent, the new league year starting. Definitely want your guys' thoughts. I think that Ben Johnson is in the runner's seat. That's who we primarily want, obviously, and I think our plan B is going to be Pete Carroll. I do wonder how the Raiders front office is going to navigate keeping certain plan Bs on the stove until the Lions season concludes. Looking forward to what you guys think about that. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
All right, there's Tarek. And yeah, I mean, he's right about, as we talked about earlier, with many of these candidates being in the playoffs, then you have to wait till they're done to actually make an official offer and all that, and to have the in-person. So, yeah, does Pete Carroll go somewhere else before the Raiders even have an opportunity to hire him if he's plan B? Could happen. So you have to have plan A, B, and C, right, Mo? But I also think that despite the limitations, and call it right, wrong, or whatever, that I think if a coach is close and wants a certain job, could always change his mind. But I think that they would have at least some understanding that, hey, we got to wait to finalize this, but I'm thinking this sounds good, or whatever the assurance are verbally with agents and all that, we'll have to see. But certainly something to think about.
Certainly something to think about. The only other job that Pete Carroll's been strongly linked to is the Bears job. So let's say Ben Johnson takes the Bears job. I would think Pete Carroll will still be available. Now the Cowboys job just entered the market. We'll see how that materializes. They've been talking to Deion Sanders of all people, which would be interesting. But I would think that if Raiders don't land Ben Johnson, and I said this before, and Tarek just reiterated it, that Pete Carroll's probably the strong plan B there. But if it's not Ben Johnson or Pete Carroll, then where do you go? And I still say my dark horse there is Todd Monken. And I could see them then further extending their interview list with other candidates as well, saying, okay, we didn't land Ben Johnson. We don't get Pete Carroll. He's not interested as much as he thought he was. We're going to expand that list, and the process may take quite a while. So again, Raider Nation, be patient with this process. Depending on how far the Lions go in the playoffs, if Ben Johnson chooses another job and they have to pivot, who knows what could happen. So Tarek used the phrase that we've been using a lot during this show: cautiously optimistic, hoping for Ben Johnson, but understanding that it could go in another direction.
Absolutely. And I think too that something tells me that they will also announce these two hires at the same time. They've done that they didn't do it last time, but they did it for obvious reasons with McDaniels and Ziegler. But I think that they want them to come in as a partnership. So I would say that you probably have to be patient on both of these. Now, I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe they got to jump on one or the other. If the coach coming in can't agree to a deal yet, but says, yeah, I'm good with that guy as the GM, or yeah, it sounds good, that's a good partnership, then maybe they hire them first. But for some reason, it tells me the way the Raiders do things, that they'll wait and announce both of them at the same time. So patience is the key word. All right, Mo, we know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific for your Bleacher Report lives during the offseason. Tell everybody else what else you got. What written brilliance is on the horizon for Mr. Midtown Mo?
Well, not so much written. I'm gonna have a watch along. I'm gonna watch the playoffs together. In my new area that I'm gonna be in. No, I'm just kidding. Not no watch along. I will be watching the playoffs. In the divisional round, not just for Ben Johnson, not for the tidbits of Tom Brady there in his commentary. I'm waiting for Tom Brady to just sneak a "just win, baby" comment into his commentary. Maybe that will happen. Maybe it won't. But no, honestly, seriously, I'm going to have a Sports Knot piece coming up early in the week. Not sure what the topic will be, depending on how the news flows, but it will be out on Sports Knot. And as you mentioned, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday over at Bleacher Report, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I'll be back here with you in the middle of the week, taking your calls and hearing your thoughts on the GM head coaching search, assuming the Raiders are still waiting for an answer for one of their candidates. Patience is a virtue.
I know it sucks. You want to know now, but we'll stay on top of it. And so make sure you follow the show wherever you can follow the show, including on X, SNB Today. Follow Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully, and we'll stay in the conversation in between shows. But that's where we're at. So we'll be back with you guys next week. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. We are an Odyssey Sports original. Don't forget to rate and review. And for those of you watching us on video, thank you so much. And a big special thank you to the folks at BetUS who make the video possible. They are our sponsor here. Don't forget 150% sign-up bonus using the code YouTube150. That's YouTube150, up to $2,000, 150% bonus from the folks at BetUSA. Mo, my friend, I will see you next week when the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are officially the national champions.
Scott's going to be insufferable if the Notre Dame Fighting Irish win the title. But take care, Scott. Enjoy the game and take care of the nation.
All right. For our producer, Mike Rabier, for Momoton, I am Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black Today. We will talk to everybody next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.